All right. Well, usually Chris has like some semi-competent segue in between these categories, but honestly, I don't even know how to follow that. So let's talk about how the game plays.
Just yell out segue.
I don't know why I laughed there. There's no reason.
And you know what? I'll go ahead and go first. Why not? So one thing that I do want to point out about the gameplay, and some people might feel that it's trivial, but I do think it is important, is that the game itself is actually fun to play mechanically. It's smooth, it is responsive, and for the record, it damn well should be, since it's, the Quake engine after all. So if it didn't, I would have to wonder what the developers did to fuck it up, but it does play pretty well. Outside of that, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into this. And I know that Chris definitely has some things to say on this as well. I cannot imagine playing this game on anything other than easy. Mostly because the enemy AI is some of the most unfair horseshit garbage I have seen in quite some time. Chris was just complaining about how Lieutenant Powell is a lieutenant and therefore could not possibly be as, well versed in all of the various weaponry that you come across and somehow manages to heroically survive every single encounter. But these motherfuckers, all right, have pinpoint precision. They have like this ungodly reaction time and eagle eye vision. They will snipe you from across the map. This gives me Counter-Strike PTSD, okay, is what I'm saying. Some asshole with an op from across the map headshots me and I'm just dead. And these guys, man, I don't know what it is, but they just like to hit scan you and they are deadly precise. And so what ends up happening with that, right, is like all of the stealthy or tactical approaches to these missions that you might want to take, which I certainly wanted to take, end up largely being pointless, which sucks because that's, for me at least, that was part of what kind of helped to immerse me in these scenarios, in this story, was thinking like, okay, if I were there, how would I approach this? If I was Lieutenant Powell in World War II, how would I approach this situation? And in a lot of cases, you'd want to be more tactical about your approach to things. But because these guys apparently have super hearing also, you will basically almost immediately get noticed when you do damn near anything. Even the walk button,
oh fuck,
which allegedly makes you stealthy, doesn't seem to do a whole lot.
Nope.
Seems selective.
Yeah, it really is. It's like whenever it decides to work, I guess. It's a huge bummer because I wanted to play that way, and the game almost wants you to play that way, because there are a handful of these missions where they're just like, all right, we're giving you this silenced pistol, and you're going to go in and you're going to infiltrate this Nazi base, and you're going to grab these documents and you're going to make it out. And this is what the OSS is about. You're a Sam Fisher sneaky son of a bitch. And then like 5 seconds into it, you're like, okay, well, fuck it. Where's the Thompson? Because I started blasting, and that's what happens for the rest of the level.
It's like that Danny DeVito, It's Always Sunny meme. So anyway, I started blasting.
Yes,
exactly. And like the perfect example of this was actually that one level where I think it's like a chateau or something that they're holed up in as like a command post. And you're supposed to go in and collect various pieces of intel. And they're like, yeah, you could totally infiltrate and be real like fucking stealthy about it. And I'm like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And then that just gets thrown out the window almost immediately, no matter what you do. And then they're like, oh, you can also shut off the alarms so that the Germans won't know that you're there anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. Thank you, game, for telling me this. And so I go to the nearest post where there is an alarm and I shut it off. And I shit you not, in like less than 2 seconds, the alarm's fucking on again. So it's pointless. And that happened every single time there was this alarm mechanic. It would be like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to shut this off. And it just turned right back on again because some Nazi somewhere.
I never had that.
Like hit another alarm somewhere else in the level that I don't know where it was, because apparently they all knew I was there. And man, the whole thing just falls apart with that. So you just go in with an automatic weapon, like every level, which for the record, is fun to just go in guns blazing.
Yes.
But I just feel like that wasn't what they were going for.
So I got to agree with everything Shane is saying in terms of gameplay. I will say this. The first 2 or 3 levels are really, 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 really good in terms of how they execute. You have to kind of suspend your disbelief because it's trying to give you this really super serious World War II environment. And you have Nazis just jumping out of fucking toilets and shit. Like every single corner. Here's a Nazi. Like they know where you are. And it's comically, and I'm not saying like comically as in hilarious, like almost comic book-esque action. Like they just jump out and you just have to like you're just mowing them down. Like, this wouldn't happen in World War II. This is incredibly silly. This is unrealistic as fuck. But it does serve for a good video game. It does serve for good video game action. And it is essentially Quake or Doom in World War II. And it's using a Quake 3 engine. And you'll know this when you see id Entertainment at the beginning, who I actually thought developed this game. It wasn't. It was 2015 Inc., who apparently, as Josh found out, went on to create Infinity Ward later, which, okay, cool. Like you have some really good credential first-person shooter minds behind this in terms of development. And it does show. But yes, like what Shane was alluding to, one of the missions where you're trying to sneak in and the game tells you you're supposed to sneak in and they will hear your machine guns. And if they hear your machine guns, then the entire mission is running afoot and it will be a failure. And they take all your fucking weapons away from you. They don't just like tell you this. They say, here's the silenced pistol, and they take away your Thompson. And you have to pick it up from a Nazi once you kill them. This isn't like at the beginning of a level. This is in the middle of a level. And guess what? You can pick up a Thompson immediately, so it doesn't even fucking matter. Like, it's just, okay, fuck it. Sometimes the alarms work. I didn't have the same consistency of failure that Shane did. Like, you could stealth around and move around and kind of protect yourself to an extent. But yes, the stealth missions were completely pointless. It was stupid. The walk button was stupid. You were almost better suited on charging enemies and killing them with your machine gun. And this was on easy mode, of course, because that's what I played at. I played on easy mode because the enemies would drop health more often. Or you could just take it really super slow and snipe them with your sniper rifle, which also would work and help you out quite a bit. More so than sneaking up them and trying to use your pistol, which was just futile. To summarize everything, the gameplay, when it's on, it's fucking on. But when it's off, it's frustrating. And this is even shown in as early as the D-Day scenario, not when you're on the beach, because I can understand that. But it's not quite clear in what it's trying to communicate that you have to do. So you have to charge the trenches and you have to pick up a sniper rifle. But that doesn't tell you to pick up a sniper rifle. It just sounds like, hey, you got to charge the trenches. But if you charge the trenches, they will fucking kill you. There's no way out of it. You're going to fucking die.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know the exact place you're talking about.
Right beneath the bunker, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And it's not quite clear. If you don't know you have to pick up the sniper rifle and kill the gunners who keep on respawning, then you're going to die. And it's not clear about that. I had to look up a video and be like, what does this game want me to do? Because I'm not understanding it. And then after a while, it's fine. And then you get to level 5, or there's 6 levels. And level 5 is where the Nazis all of a sudden can snipe you from wherever they want to. That you can't see them because they can snipe you with precision, as Shane said, behind leaves and foliage, as to the point that you can't see them at all. But they can fucking get a headshot out on you, no problem.
Not only that, Chris, not only can they shoot you through dense foliage,
oh my God,
they can also shoot you literally through walls.
Yeah,
because I had that happen. And that I know the one you're talking about, too, because, again, that was a level I really wanted to love. I really did, because the conceit of that level is fantastic. And also it's one of the many things that was modeled largely off of Saving Private Ryan, actually, purposefully. Mm-hmm. But that whole section where you need to navigate that, I believe it was a French town, navigating this town that's just full of sniper nests. And like from a gameplay perspective, that gets me super hype. I'm like, all right, yes, I'm going to like be real tactical about this. I'm going to sneak through these buildings. I'm going to find these snipers. I'm going to take them out. This is fucking awesome. And it didn't play out that way at all. There was one part where, thank God, it's a PC game and it has quick save.
Seriously.
Good Lord. I don't know what I would have done otherwise. But there was one spot I got stuck at because every time I stuck my head out, I would get shot in the face. And I'm like, where is this fucker? And I scanned the entire area I was in, could not find him. So finally I said, all right, you know what? Screw this. So I swapped to my automatic. I just bum rushed where I thought he might be and found out that he was literally behind a building shooting me. There was no way he had a line of sight to me, and I was just getting sniped through a wall. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, that's A+. Real excited about this.
Yeah. Level 5 is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Level 6, may the Schwartz be with you. That level is a lot of fun.
It's Gauntlet.
Yeah.
It's Gauntlet.
It takes forever.
It really does.
It goes way too long. It overstays its welcome. But I will say, like, the first 3 or 4 levels of this game are immensely fun. And by the way, level 5, when you get into the tank, it doesn't make up for it because those sections suck too. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. It's not fun.
The tank sections are awful.
Yeah, they're not good.
See, I actually kind of liked those though. Like
Nope.
that was the one thing where I was like, cool, I get to drive around in a tank and blow shit up. Like that actually wasn't too bad.
You were just reprieved from the horrible mechanics that preceded it. I think that's it.
That's probably that's fair. That's probably true.
I mean, they're not that good. But I think that is a good segue because you came in here, Josh, and you said that you thought they were awful. I think I've spoken my piece on this. Josh, what's your impressions with the gameplay here?
So kind of like in between you guys in a lot of ways, where it's like I didn't have an issue with the alarm system like Shane did, and I'm with you on that, Chris. But like at the same time, I do think actually, you know what? I don't know. I agree with you guys on a lot of stuff. So their pinpoint accuracy is obnoxious. It is such a, and it's a symptom of old FPS design. Like if you ever play the original, I couldn't get through it. The original Far Cry, you'll be like, oh, it's fucking impossible. I remember literally spawning in the first mission. I took like 5 steps and I started getting shot. Couldn't see where I was getting shot from. Died like 6 times. I'm like, well, fuck this. I'm never doing this again. And never went back to it. And that Sniper's Nest mission is very indicative of that. It very much reminded me of that. I think overall the gameplay, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Chris, where it's like when it's on, it's on. Like it is so fun. Like all the different weapons are still fun to use. They're satisfying to shoot. The individual missions, I think actually they do a good job of immersing you into this world, especially the final mission. As much as it's like a gauntlet where it's a very long mission, there's a lot of different levels in it. There's one specific level, and I'm blanking on it. I'm going to see if I have the level list in front of me. I think it's the Siegfried Forest. I think it's the very first one. It's like the first couple that you.
I do like that one.
It's unnerving because there's fog everywhere. You don't know where the Nazis are. You can't see as far as you normally do in the rest of the game. Your field of vision is much smaller because of the fog, and you know the level is smaller than it appears, but because of the fog, it really, like, even now playing this in 2022, I was very surprised by how I didn't know how big this area was. It felt huge especially for the time. I'm sure it really wasn't that big, but because you can't see all of it and you can't see to the other end of it, it really, like, your imagination really fills in the gaps, even though logically you can understand that it's probably a lot more limited than you're giving it credit for. So I really liked that. I also really like the set pieces that they choose, even if they're not always implemented well. I really like the very first mission where you're riding in the back of trucks with all the Rangers and then you get out. I do think they kind of like set up for this really fun mission and then they dash it right away because all the Rangers die at the very beginning of the mission. So it's like you feel like you're part of this squad, you're part of this team, and then nope, they're all dead. You're on your own. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, the first year lieutenant. Yeah.
Yeah, it just kills them right off the bat. Like you lose everybody.
Oh God, that reminds me just real quick because
Yeah.
you mentioned that. That reminds me of something I didn't mention when we were talking about the plot stuff. But that thing that they try to do at the end with the very final mission at Fort Schwartz when they're just like, Yes, and we're bringing back a lot of the men from your original unit to fucking help you out on this. It's supposed to be like this big, like, oh shit, it's my dudes moment. And I was like, who the fuck are these guys? Like, I don't, should I have known them? Like,
do I have an emotional connection to them? I don't know.
Right, exactly. Sorry, that reminded me of it, but go on.
I think one thing that this game does better than the other Medal of Honor games that were eventually developed in-house by EA was that the set pieces, the missions don't feel as slapped together as later ones. Like, and what I mean by that is that it feels like each mission logically progresses into the next one, which kind of gives your, like, the actual gameplay portions of it a little bit more meaning. In Medal of Honor Frontline, there's like literally like you take part in D-Day, and then it's almost like in those games, I can't even describe, I'm trying to remember, but basically you'll be part of a mission and then something will come up and they'll completely change the mission mid-mission. So it feels like there's like a sense of like just real going on the fly, which I understand happens in, you know, in war and shit, but it just, I don't know, it felt more purposeful in this, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Though I did feel bad for your character in that I thought it was so strange right before, if I'm remembering correctly, because they give the dates for all of these. There was like one mission where it's like you just go through Operation Overlord and then they make you go behind enemy lines. Like if you look at the dates, it's June 6th through 7th. And then like 10 days late, like 12 days later, you're like, all right, now we're going to send you behind enemy lines. I'm like, I just literally watched all of my friends die in front of me. And now you're sending me behind enemy lines. Like, it just seems like this guy doesn't get a fucking break.
I mean, I think that was World War II. I could completely understand if that was the case. I think that's realistic to an extent. But
sorry, I am rambling a little bit. But basically, I really liked. I think the gameplay overall holds up pretty well, and like I love the specific missions, like I mentioned, the fog in Fort Schwartz, and remember the Schwartz, and then you also have like I think the Tiger Tank mission is a good idea. That Sniper's Nest is awfully implemented, like we were all saying, and because you also have to, it's an escort mission too. You have to keep people alive during that thing too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And thankfully they're relatively well equipped, but it still is outrageously difficult.
I will say the AI doesn't suck. You're right.
Yeah. They stay alive pretty well. And especially when you get the medic along with you and he keeps giving you health.
Yeah. That was nice.
It's really well done. Medal of Honor, I think it's worth noting that one of its biggest contributions to the FPS genre and to the video games in general is both AI and also music. And we'll get to I'm not going to go into music in detail. I know that's something we're bringing up in a little bit, but the original Medal of Honor was the first game to incorporate like a full orchestra. And I believe it was either the first or one of the first games to incorporate actual orchestral like scores recorded for the game directly into it, because it could with, you know, CD-ROM technology. And it also did a lot with AI, because the original Medal of Honor, like if you shot a Nazi in the foot, he would grab his foot. If you shot him in his arm, he would grab his arm. If you threw a grenade, he would either kick it back at you or jump on it. And I feel like they kind of took it up a little bit to the level in this, where like if you run up to a Nazi, he might back away, because now like that's not how they fight. You know, they might try to back away and shoot you or melee you and run away, or they'll hide, like as we said before, they hide in fucking closets and then they'll jump out at you. And one last thing I'll say about the gameplay, we can talk about the stealth and how it's very hit or miss. The stealth missions were fun when you actually could get into uniform, into like a German uniform, because then it actually made you feel like you were going undercover. Mm-hmm. But I did notice this, the last mission, there's a section where you have to go undercover. I shot the one guy with a silenced pistol. Like there's a dude at the gate, and I shot him, took him out. Every dude from there on out was immediately suspicious of me, except for the guys who were programmed not to be suspicious of me.
Yep.
So you take out the guy, you go into the base, you take out the first German officer, and you get on the uniform. I walked around and the guy started shooting me. I'm like, you haven't seen me shoot anybody. Why are you attacking me? But then I went down into the lower level and they were all fine with me because I had the uniform on. I thought that was really weird. I watched a long play of it just to see some of it. Like I was trying to check on something. The dude just completely ignored killing the guy at the gate and just snuck into the base, killed the officer. No one did a damn thing. He literally made it in and out of the entire base without anyone. It was the mission where you have to blow up the base. Like you have to get the Stig 44 or whatever and blow it up.
Mm-hmm.
He was undercover the whole time. No one once blew his cover. I was in shock.
Wait, so do you mean through the entirety? I mean, after the explosion, all bets are off, though, right?
No, they didn't touch him.
Are you serious?
He just ran out.
What the fuck? How?
I don't know.
Okay, that's crazy. Because yeah, like I managed to get through the first part of it, well, mostly fine. There was that one guy that was like standing at the bottom of like a small little staircase that was like perpendicular to where you come into the room. For some reason, if you walk past him, like you're walking from behind him. So there's no like indication that you're supposed to show him your papers or whatever. So I just walked past him and they were like, oh my God, it's a fucking infiltrator, and started shooting me. And I was like, what? Why? What happened? And so I had to reload that. Other than that, I didn't have any issue. But then as soon as I blew that place up, though, everybody was like on me. So that's interesting.
Yes. If I can find the link again, I'll send it to you just so you can see it. But I was in utter shock. Dude just fucking ran through the whole thing and was fine. And I was mad. I'm like, what the fuck did he do differently that I didn't?
All right. Yeah, that's wild. I want to know more about that. But there are a couple of things I want to touch on just real quick, because I know we're going kind of long on the gameplay, but usually that's kind of the meat of a lot of this conversation that we tend to have. But there is something that I just really wanted to point out, because it bothered me, like personally, like on a personal level. Like I feel like I'm actually offended by this and I want answers. Listen, I know this is probably a symptom of like early 2000s game design, but damn if there are not some like real obvious monster closets in these levels, some literal closets, but I use the term in the sense of like listen, Doom 3 got a whole bunch of shit for being a monster closet simulator. Like that was a term that was thrown around a lot when that game was released. And this game totally does the same shit, where like actually I think it's one of the first handful of levels. If you go and walk into one of the buildings where a couple of Nazis kind of run out to try to shoot at you, the inside of the building is literally just a rectangle. Like it's just a box. There's nothing inside. There's no window dressing, no tables. It's just an empty box. And that happens fairly often.
They're just having a party.
Nazi party.
Sure. But that happens fairly often, like where you can go and explore parts of the level where enemies have come out from. And it's very like painfully obvious that this is just a spawn point. And that just seems a little lazy from a design perspective to me, because again, it's so incongruous with what they're trying to do with the story, such as it is, right? Because they're like trying to immerse you in this thing and trying to be like, this is, you know, you are in World War II, you are Lieutenant Powell. And then you have shit like this from a design perspective where it's just like, yeah, those two guys were definitely hanging out in this nondescript bare room for no reason. And that just really bothered me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Like maybe I'm taking that too personally, but it threw me out of it so hard to like see those things there.
I never really noticed it.
And then of course the actual closets, but that's a whole other thing.
I feel like it might be a little bit over the top with that, just only because like in Doom 3 it's a horror game, so when you're basing all your horror around jump scares, I feel like there's some justified not outrage, but some justified criticism with that. When you have a game that's meant for historical accuracy and you throw some jump scares in there, it's like, yeah, you may not like it, but it's not like this. I don't know. I think you're conflating your anger with Doom 3 or maybe other games of that ilk with the jump scares in this.
For the record, I actually liked Doom 3.
Okay.
It's not that it's like a jump scare thing. That's not what I'm taking umbrage with. It's the fact that the developers made the choice, whether it was deliberately or just for like sake of time, to not fully flesh out those rooms that the enemies were clearly spawning from. It's an immersion thing.
There's no tables in these rooms.
Right. I mean, I know you're joking about it, but legitimately, that's what I mean.
No, I get what you're saying. It's an immersion thing. It's a fair point, though. You're right.
You go into there and it's just a bare room with just walls. There's no windows, no nothing. And I'm like, okay, like we could have at least thrown a couple of assets in here to make it look like a livable room. You know, I feel like that's not a big ask.
I think you have a point. I could see. It didn't bother me as much, but I can see your point in the way you're describing it.
Actually, I didn't notice that at all. Probably just because I'm not a fan of first person shooters. So you're like, oh, this is an obvious spawn point, and be like, if you say so. I guess. Sure.
There was a couple times when, like, you mentioned the closets. I remember like walking by that. I'm like, there seems like there'd be a guy in there, and it scared me a couple times. Like, I would specifically in that sniper mission. There's a closet early on. Like, if you in the beginning of the sniper mission, when you walk down the road, there's a building on the corner of the street on the right side, and it's like half blown up, and there's a closet up in the second floor of it. And I remember the first time I walked by it and no one came out. I'm like, oh, okay, we're good then. But then I died and the mission had to start back because I forgot to quick save. And I went back to that same spot because I was safe up there. And then a dude burst out of the fucking wardrobe. So I'm like, what is this shit? Is there like is this like selective Narnia or something where the Nazis just come out? Like, I'm just so confused.
The Chronicles of Nazi Arnia.
There you go. We did it.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Nazi.
The Lion, the Reich, and the wardrobe.
Right.
That's better. I like that one more.
The Lion, the Reich, and the Goebbels.
There we go. And speaking of strange words, this is a super random thing, but it makes me laugh every time. There is a mission in this game where you have to take out Nebelwerfers, and that sounds like a D&D monster, not an actual weapon. I know it's a real weapon, but in Wikipedia it says he is sent into the countryside beyond the beaches to assist various American units who are being harassed by Nebelwerfers. And it just sounds like, you know, your party went outside the town and these crazy like hobgoblins called Nebelwerfers or something. It sounds like a fantasy villain or a fantasy monster that or a mob spawn you would see in like an MMO.
Yeah. They attack with 1d8 and 1d6.
Sorry, Lieutenant Powell traipsed out into the countryside equipped with his trusty Vorpal blade.
Can I magic missile the darkness?
I think one thing I do want to talk about is the weapons while we're on it and just the gunplay itself, which I will say I appreciated and didn't appreciate at the same time. I think I could appreciate it in the sense that, like, your pistols aren't semi-automatic in the same sense that you'll get in later FPSs. You can't just keep on repeatedly pressing the trigger. Your character has to reload them, selectively reload them, of course. And reloading, like, it takes some strategy in order to do it. You do have to place your shots strategically and smartly and everything like that. So I can appreciate that the weapons did pay respect to how they would operate within that era, which is a lot better than what was tried to be done. Like the History Channel tried making some game in the Civil War and trying to have it be super accurate.
I have that game. Haven't played it.
I've heard it's a disaster because you are like a Civil War soldier and it takes you 60 seconds to reload. Like, oh, yay.
Gameplay.
Yes. It's realism. It's immersion.
Don't you like real life violence and death?
Oh, no, you can't have that.
Like the desert bus of FPS.
Yes. So I think this game pays enough respect to that era of gunplay with, again, going back to the pistol. You just can't go around and just shoot people with pistols nonchalantly. You can melee with your pistol, which you can't do with any other weapon.
That makes no sense.
The Nazis can for some fucking reason. I don't understand why. But I can appreciate that the use of weaponry did contain some level of thought in how you use and operate them. So there's that.
Can I just say one thing I miss about FPSs from this era, and it's you can't do it really well in this game, but you can do it very well in some other like FPSs on the PS2, is that there is the right amount of no realism when it comes to the accuracy. Like every gun is pinpoint accurate when you're firing. And I love that because one of the things I tried it in this and I was able to get it to work once, but I couldn't do it consistently. I did it a lot in specifically the PS2 game, James Bond Nightfire, where what you do if you want to conserve your sniper ammo, which you never really need to do in this game, they give you so much. But if you wanted to conserve your sniper ammo, you aim down the sight for the dude's head. You don't move your mouse and you switch over to the pistol. And then you fire. And since there is no physics involving bullets in this game, this dude will be 4 football fields away and you just snipe that motherfucker with a pistol. And it's amazing.
Wow.
It worked once for me. I was only able to get it to work once. I was trying to take out guards in the guard tower without them hearing me. So I zoomed in with the sniper rifle, aimed for the guy's head, switched back to the pistol, the silenced pistol, fired once, took the dude out in one shot. Every other time I tried it after that, did not work. So I was like, okay, I don't know why, but I'm happy I got it to work once.
See, that's interesting because I'm pretty sure playing through it that silenced pistol specifically at one point, like when you first get it, they tell you like, yeah, like this thing is accurate to about 15 yards. And I had noticed that at a certain distance, you just will not hit shit with that pistol.
That makes a lot more sense why it didn't work later on. So I must have just gotten stupid lucky on that first one. But
I guess so.
That strategy does work, by the way, in 007 Nightfire. So if you have a hankering for playing that, if you want to conserve your sniper ammo, or you don't have a silenced sniper, no problem. Just aim for the dude's head with the sniper, switch over to the pistol, headshot with a silenced pistol. You can hit him from a mile away. It's great.
Nice.
Wow.
There is one thing, and I don't know if either of you experienced this, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. But you know how they really built up that was Stig 44? Is that what it was? The one that you're supposed to find?
Whatever.
Yeah, like, or STG. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. I'm sure some gun aficionado will correct me, but they built it up to be like, this is a fucking amazing gun. The world has never seen anything like it. It's crazy. And then you get there, and once you pick it up, if you start using it, that thing fucking sucks. It was terrible.
What? No.
I thought it was good.
I thought it was fine too.
No, it was inaccurate as shit.
I like the Thompson more, but it was good.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing is like I started using it, and for some reason I would be aiming like directly, like body shot on a guy, and I would go through like half a mag trying to kill this dude. And I know part of that is because the game was intelligent enough to make body shots do less damage. So kudos there. But like, it would go through like half a mag to kill one dude. And I'm like, this feels wrong. And so like I would swap back to the Thompson and that thing would just mow people down. I'm like, okay, well, I guess this real awesome experimental gun they've got is actually trash. Like I stopped using it, which was really strange.
I didn't have that. I thought it killed guys faster.
No, I had the opposite experience.
You do bring up an interesting point with the body location. That's one thing that Medal of Honor does. They don't do it in the newer games, but they keep track of location damage. So at the end of each mission, it tells you, like how many headshots you got, how many times you shot a guy in the crotch or the arm or the leg. And I don't remember if they did it in this one, but in the older games, it would give you nicknames for how, like based off your accuracy. So if you shot a lot of guys in like the crotch, you were called like family killer or something. It was like a little snarky remark for you shooting everybody's balls off. I forgot what it was. I think that was in the original one, I think, but I always liked that. I always liked that they kept track of like where you shot everyone, because it kind of gave you an idea of like how bad you panic.
I need to look at those medals. I didn't even know they gave you medals. That's cool.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good segue because that was the last thing I was going to talk about before we go on to graphics. But yeah, I just wanted to give a quick props to the medal system that was in this game, just because this was an era before achievements basically ruined everything ever.
They didn't ruin anything. They're great.
Which is hyperbolic, I know, but there was a lot more creativity that went into these sort of like, I don't even want to call them achievements because that's its own thing now, but certain acts let's say going above and beyond the Call of Duty, perhaps.
Boo! Boo!
But the point is like, and this, it's funny because this game actually made me think about the fact that I might do a video games or mistake episode for our patrons on this topic specifically, that achievements have killed creativity. And that's because like the medals that you get in this game, you have a case where you store your medals that you earn, and you get them by doing specific things that actually make sense in the context of the mission, that someone who would go above and beyond during that mission would ostensibly receive a medal for. Like, for instance, in that mission I was talking about earlier, where you're supposed to be gathering intel, if you're thorough in your exploration of the chateau that they're occupying, you find explosives and you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure what these are for. And then when you go outside, there are 2 German tanks that are parked out there that if you have the explosives, now you suddenly have a little indicator on those tanks to say, hey, you can throw those explosives on these tanks. And if you do that, it was never something that was asked of you in the mission. It's not an objective, but if you do it, you gain a medal that you then have in your nice little wooden medal case that you can view on the main screen. And there's something a lot more like personal about that, and the fact that it ties so well into what is actually happening, that I really appreciate that. And I know it feels like a really minor thing, but it stood out to me because I'm just so sick of seeing achievements that are just like, kill 100 dudes with this weapon. And I'm like, why? Like, that's not an achievement. That's just grinding. Or like, I'm going to have to do this weird thing that makes no sense in the context of the game otherwise, simply to get this achievement. Like, that's a whole other topic. But I just wanted to say I really liked the medal system in this game. I thought it was very well thought out.
It's a gameplay mechanic that reinforces your immersion. So it's not just it's taking the act of getting achievements, quote unquote, and turning it into an actual gameplay mechanic, or I should say a storytelling mechanic, not a gameplay, a storytelling mechanic, instead of just a statistic. So you get a statistic because you get this feedback. You know, you're doing a specific thing. You've killed so many enemies in a mission. You rescued these people in a mission. So you get that statistic of doing it. But at the same time, it builds the immersion of the world they're creating, because you are Lieutenant Mike Powell and you're this decorated war veteran, because not only did you do this mission, but you did this mission and, you know, such and such, whatever objective that was required in order for you to get that star or that award or whatnot. There's like, you know, you have the Bronze Star, the Silver Star, and the Distinguished Service Cross, which you get for completing the game on the hard difficulty. But then they have individual special medals for completing, like you were saying, those special tasks. So like in the first mission, if you rescue both the US and the UK POW, you get the Legion of Merit medal. So it's stuff like that. Like it reinforces, it further immerses you into this military world that they've created for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, I agree 100%. Yeah. Rather than the, you know, sort of tacked on achievement systems that actually in a lot of ways kind of serve to pull you out of that immersion. So yeah, absolutely.
So I guess this is a good time to talk about how well this game is held up graphically. I would have to say, graphically speaking, I think this game for the most part has held up pretty well. And I think this is like right at the cusp of that era where you can start to say that. I know a lot of early PS2 games, like you look back at them now and they're kind of rough. And there's still some roughness to these graphics. Like you can tell this is from the pre-HD era. But for the most part, they're extremely tolerable. Like you're not going to get the same stuff you get today, of course. You have to kind of put the throwback eyes on and lower your expectations a bit. But they're not, if you turn up all the settings on your computer, which should not be hard to do at this point with any computer you're running it on. Ideally, right? Now, if you can't, look, I'm sorry for you. For the most part, they're fine. What I will say is this: what was irritating is that there are some levels where the borders are outlined in this really thick black line that makes it look like you're in the Truman Show or in a box. And I don't know what it is. I was playing the game on GOG Galaxy on my computer. Now, if you don't have these same outlines and the same box things, I don't know if I did something wrong or if it's something on the settings that I did, but it was really strange. But other than that, yeah, I really can't complain about what was presented here in terms of graphics.
No, I actually had the same thing happen. So I'm not sure if it's this particular version of the game from the war chest that is available on Good Old Games, or if it's just a symptom of running this game on higher resolutions on more modern PCs. But I had that same issue that I definitely know I did not have when I played this back in like 2002, 2003, where, yeah, I would actually see the seams of the skybox in every one of the levels. And so it made it felt super weird. Like the D-Day beach landing is actually one that stuck out to me, especially.
Oh, so bad because of it.
Yeah, it totally took me out of it because I was just looking around and I'm like, I am in this tiny blue box with all of these other boats. And I know this is supposed to feel real epic right now, but I can see that I'm inside of this cube. But that's not the game's fault.
It probably wasn't like that back in 2002.
It was not. I assure you, it was not.
I didn't have those issues, but I also don't think I would have noticed. Like, I bet you they were there and I just didn't notice. And I'm serious. Like, I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. And I feel like sometimes I should if I'm trying to honestly critique graphics and stuff like that. But overall, I'm with you on this. I think the graphics look still appealing. And I think there's an important distinction that a lot of people, not you guys, but just in general, when people go back and look at older games, there's a big difference between art direction and graphical fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
Graphical fidelity can be lower, but if the art direction is smart, then the art, regardless of how high res or how detailed or how many polygons are in that art or how detailed a sprite is, then it doesn't really matter so much. Like you look, that's like Super Mario World still looks great, 30 some odd years later because the art direction's fucking great. Even if you look at like some early 3D games like Sly Cooper for the PS2, mainly because of cell shading,
absolutely,
but still looks really fucking good.
Wind Waker.
Yes, Wind Waker still looks really good all these years later because the art direction was smart. And I don't know if they future proofed it intentionally, but it's been future proofed because of that. Now, with this, it is dated because they went for a realistic approach. But with that said, this looks a lot better than some other Medal of Honor games from the same time. Like, I don't think, like Medal of Honor Frontline, the character models look really, they look very off-putting. They just look like, oh, this just looks like an old character model. It looks more matter of fact than bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah.
And I think that's the best you can hope for games that were going for realism back then. I think the best example I can have of like why I think the graphics are appealing of this in this game are the fog area that I mentioned before, because I think it just works really well for that. And then the town you end up in the last mission, it's this really like ambient style. Like the lighting is really nice, even though it's really basic. Like there's not like dynamic shadows and shit. But just the way they decided to light up make certain textures a little bit brighter than others to make it appear to light on inside the house, even though it's just a flat texture and there's nothing behind it. It looks really appealing walking through that town, even though that town's a really tough area to go through. It's a really like aesthetically pleasing area to traverse. And I wanted to explore it more if I wasn't trying to. One, if I didn't get angry at some of the random bullshit, like guys hiding that I couldn't see where they're at. That's one thing. I want to say one quick thing just on the gameplay. One last thing. Where it has shown its age the most in its gameplay, in my opinion, is in the hit detection. Because they gives you have your compass that shows you the cardinal direction that the shot came from, but you can't see where the bullet comes from. So you could be facing the direction you're getting shot at, but that doesn't fucking matter because if you can't see the guy, you're not seeing the bullet where it's coming from. Newer games do a better job at helping you track where the bullet comes from. In this one, it's just you just spray and pray and hope. But anyway, I think the graphics hold up pretty well, specifically because the art direction was really well done for a realistic looking game at the time.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on board with what you both said. I will say that point you just made about the not being able to locate the shots. I was looking for muzzle flares, man. That's what you need. You need muzzle flares to know where the hell those shots are coming from, and you didn't have any. And that was a super bummer.
You guys didn't know? It shows on the compass.
No, it does, but only the general area.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, I got you.
Like if you're trying to scan the horizon to see where the shooter is, they didn't have any like muzzle flash animations, and they don't show you where the bullet's flying from.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple times I was facing straight at it, and I couldn't see the guy who was shooting at me. It was literally dead on. Just my face was getting shot. Couldn't see the guy.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Same thing happened to me in level 5. That's why I hate that level. Anyway, going back to the graphics.
Yeah, but the graphics. So it's actually interesting that you point out that town level in particular, Josh, because that was something that I did want to bring up. It wasn't in my notes, but it was something that I saw while I was playing, and I was like, holy shit, that's actually really awesome.
The level design's nice too.
It is. That level overall is actually really well done. enemy bullshit aside, but there was one point where I was kind of trying to stealthily make my way through part of that level, and there are some walkways, and there's a fine layer of snow that's kind of covering everything, and some of the sort of like handrails, I guess if you want to call it that, along like some of the edges near the water, the snow on them, if you look at it, they actually took the time to put this glimmer effect over top of the white snow texture, so that when you turn the view, it glimmers in a way that snow actually does if moonlight was like being cast off of the snow. And it was really ingenious. It was a very simple little trick, because I'm pretty sure it was just like, you know, a GIF like texture just overlaid over the snow, but it worked really, really well. So I was actually surprised by that, which was awesome. But yeah, I got to say, I think overall, especially for a game that's trying to go for that realism thing, that can be really rough, because with games like Josh mentioned that have a very distinct and perhaps slightly more, let's say, cartoony art style, and that's not disparaging, those tend to hold up better because, you know, you're not trying to recreate something real necessarily. With games like this, it gets a lot tougher, and they age generally way, way worse than those other ones. And all things considered, especially from being the very early 2000s, this still looks pretty good. I am curious on one thing, though, and I don't know if this was just me, because Chris also experienced some of the weirdness with like the skybox textures not meeting. Did you notice on the character models, Chris, specifically the faces, if like their eyelids and stuff like looked weirdly pinched together, and like their mouths like didn't look quite right? Did that happen to you?
I'll have to say I wasn't paying close enough attention. I just wanted to kill them.
Okay, well, I meant mostly on your allies, but
you know,
fair.
their faces, their entire face animations looked weird. And it's not to say I mean, I didn't want to kill my allies because they actually were serviceable. I didn't pay attention to them because I was too busy trying to figure out what was going on. But when I did see them, yes, the facial models and animations weren't exactly what you would call up to standard today,
right?
In any sense. Yeah, they're not very good. And even if you look at some of the sprite work that they did for some of the models on their sleeves, like they would have their rank, like if they're a sergeant or whatever the rank might be, they're very pixelated and low quality as well. So there are flaws that are inherent of the era that were definitely designed for CRT monitors through VGA, and that's what they were probably anticipating the highest level of quality these games would be played on. They're not anticipating these games would be played in 1080p or 4K through an HDMI connector back in 2002.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some considerations that have to be made here. And of course, you know, everything being said, this is, I mean, it was still much better than almost everything that was being put out the market at the time. So I can't really hammer it too hard with that being said, especially when you compare it to like Xbox, PS2, GameCube. Overall, it's better than them. It's hard for me to say it's better than Halo, maybe, but you're talking about a completely different experience with Halo.
Well, Halo's art direction is like the best art direction you can get, arguably, for a console game. Like Halo 1 still looks fucking great because they went for this amazing blend of realism and fantasy, and it just works. I did an episode on Halo somewhat recently, and I still can't get over how good that game looks still.
Yeah, they really did a fantastic job with the way Halo looks, but it's going for a completely different feel. Halo's not going for World War II. It's going for a fantastic sci-fi space adventure. So you can take more liberties than you can with World War II.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I only bring that up because I think that might have been another thing that is not necessarily any fault of the game itself. It might be just either the version that we're playing or just the fact that we're playing on more modern hardware. Because again, I would have to go and see if I could find like an OG like long play of this or something, which I'm sure I could find, to see if the faces look that way on like original hardware or a PC that would have been original hardware at that time. because I do not remember them looking that strange. But again, I just was curious if I was the only one that saw that.
It's probably not just an updated port. It probably is just the models, because they were trying to cut so many corners to make things work and look good back then. Like, especially with realistic games, there's a lot of stuff that just adds up to be wonky now because we know better, or we've seen better.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to the games back then. Of course, they did the best with what they were given at the time. It's a bit of a sidebar, but like with just thinking of Medal of Honor games and rough graphics, I have this strange fascination with FPS games that for some reason decided to get ported to the GBA. And there is a Medal of Honor Underground for the PS1 got ported to the GBA. And you want to talk about texture issues? Holy fuck.
Wow.
The best way I can describe it. So say you're looking at a wall, right? You're just looking at a plain wall and there you see a texture. And the texture, the image they used for the texture of the wall is like arches. It looks like, so instead of doing 3D models of arches, it's just a picture of arches, right? Because it's a GBA, you can't really do much in terms of 3D rendering. It's just a picture of arches. As you get closer to that wall, the picture of the arches stretch out because they're trying to simulate depth by doing that.
Oh,
but it doesn't work because you walk up to it and then the arch is like 4 times your width. When you're looking at it from a distance, it might have been like you might have just fit through it. Like, it's the most insane looking thing you'll ever see. If you ever get a chance to look up like video of Medal of Honor Underground for the GBA, because the graphics on it are wild. It is so hard to look at. Like, I don't know how anybody played it even back in the day, but it's at least amusing because it's tied into this because it's Medal of Honor, but it's worth looking at.
now I feel like that's something that we should play on a stream Sunday.
Go for it, dude.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Throw them right under the bus.
Yeah. Great.
Speaking about buses that make loud noises, because I don't know why this is appropriate.
So good. I love it.
I know. It's perfect.
What a great sequitur.
We're professionals.
Let's move on to the audio quality of this game. I think, you know what, because we're kind of going long for this episode, but I know you had a lot to say on this, Josh, and I think we're going to echo a lot of what you're going to say here. So I'm just going to let you take this to start out with, and if we have anything more we're going to put out, we'll do so. So what is your perspective on the audio quality of this game?
Since we are running long, I'll try to keep it brief, but audio quality, I didn't have any issues with the audio quality. I know you guys wrote some other stuff down in the notes about that, but I love the music in this game because Medal of Honor was the first soundtrack that I ever noticed. Like, everyone always has that game where it's like, oh, wow, the music's really good in this, and it really sticks out to you. Medal of Honor was that for me because my neighbors had a Super Nintendo a Sega Genesis, and friends from church had an NES and a Super Nintendo. So I never really got to have that consistent experience with Mario Brothers. I mean, I guess everyone noticed the Mario Brothers theme, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
right.
One of the first games that I ever owned that I noticed the music of was the original Medal of Honor. And Chris, you wrote it down in the notes that future Oscar winner Michael Giacchino composed the music for this game, and he actually did the music for a lot of the games in this series. That always surprised me because I had no idea. Like, I knew who Michael Giacchino was before I knew he was the composer for The Incredibles or for Up or he did Lost and he did Alias and he's done a whole bunch of like incredible shit. And I kid you not, I would listen to these soundtracks while taking showers before school.
Wow.
Like, I loved the music so much. Medal of Honor Frontline, I think, is a better soundtrack than this, specifically because I was looking on the wiki for this, not Wikipedia, but like the fandom site. Over half of this soundtrack is reused from previous Medal of Honor games. So he didn't write a whole lot of original music for this. From what I'm seeing here, there are 5 original songs that are specific to this game. Every other song is from either the original Medal of Honor or Medal of Honor Underground. So there's just a lot of reused assets, which I was kind of bummed out to see, but I still love the soundtrack for this. I don't know what it is, but I think it's more nostalgia than anything. I do think that sometimes the orchestral stings don't match up with the action on screen, but this was also before dynamic like insertion and shit like that, where like that sounded dirty, but this was before they could figure out.
Baby. Penetrating insertion.
But this is before they could really figure out how to, like put specific music in for specific moments of gameplay and stuff like that. It was just, it was very much an old school style of design where this is just the track that plays on loop throughout the level. And you might have a couple moments here and there that they do, but by and large, it just plays on loop throughout the level. So I love the soundtrack because it's nostalgic, and I actually think it's really well written music. But in terms of implementation, it definitely shows its age because it's basically taking like almost like a Mega Man style approach where it's like, this is the track for this level. Just listen to it on repeat for the next, 40 minutes. So its implementation has definitely aged, but the music itself, I think, is really solid.
I have to 100% agree with you in that sense. That I think one of the things that gets me is I'm not a big like war porn movie enjoyer. Like a lot of these movies like the Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, like I like them, but I'm not one of those people that I think it's more problematic for me being in the military. Because you remember that like American Sniper when that came out?
Yeah.
Me being in the military, it's like everyone's like, yeah, did you go see American Sniper? I'm like, no.
Why would I go see something that reminds me of my job?
Right.
I mean, I'm not a sniper, but I get what you're saying. I'm just joking here. I hear these really dramatic scores in these games when it comes, to the implementation more specifically. It's kind of like the over dramatization of the soundtrack. And this is not me saying it's bad, because I got a lot of Star Wars vibes. And I think the Star Wars soundtrack is great. And I was getting reminded of a lot of that. But at some point, it's kind of like, okay, I'm just sitting here squatting, doing nothing. And I'm getting this very riveting, over dramatic score behind me. It's like, you're doing heroic things. And I'm like, the Nazi just jumped out from me from a hiding spot and just shot me without even giving me a chance to respond. Like, what the fuck, man? The dynamic insertion is making my butthole feel sore right now, and I kind of do not appreciate this. But you're absolutely right. Like the overall composition of this score, the overall composition of what's going on here, the music is utterly fantastic. My biggest gripe, other than just it not always necessarily gelling with the overall action, what was going on, or just being too overdramatic in the case of it being kind of cheese to me for a point, was I don't know if it's the version I had, but it sounds super compressed. Kind of like when you're listening to the music in Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64. It had this feeling like, yes, the music is really good, but we're compressing it for space. So I've never played the original version that was coming off of a CD. So maybe the music had higher clarity and fidelity in those type of releases. Maybe it's just more compressed in the digital release, but that's what I found. Other than that, sound wise, it's always fun hearing Nazis scream when you shoot them and kill them, because why wouldn't it be? And the gun sounds were fantastic. I think the explosions when you shot barrels were a little subdued. Same with any grenade or anything like that. I think they were a lot quieter than I would expect them to be, and very dull, more of a thud. But in terms of the musical score, yeah, very well composed, a little cheesy, but for some reason weirdly compressed. Shane?
So I tend to agree with most of what was said. I did point out in the notes that I kind of was on the same page of like, the music itself is good, and I'm not going to argue that it isn't, because it is. It's really well done. And the fact that, it is one of, if not the first to include like a actual orchestral soundtrack is pretty awesome.
At least in the original game, it was like the original Medal of Honor was one of the first to include it. I don't know how many included it between then and this game in 2002, but yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, at any rate, I mean, it fits, right? That sort of very epic World War II experience kind of thing. But I will say that, as you've both pointed out, there were several times where I would be playing through a level and doing something where I'm just like, yeah, this doesn't fit. Like, I'm just walking down a hallway and this is like, you're doing epic hero shit right now. And I'm like, I'm not really, not yet. But again, I think we sort of said it already, that the contextual cues of having the music properly sync up with what is occurring in the game at that time is not necessarily something that was quite figured out as well, I think, as in like later releases down the line. So we can, give it some slack there. As far as the sound design is concerned, there were a couple of things I did want to point out. I felt like the weapon sound effects were actually very, again, no pun intended, but sort of hit or miss in that some of them were pretty much right on point. Like, I think the Thompson sounded real good and chunky like it should, but some other ones were just not as like punchy as I wanted them to be. Like that Stig, again, I felt like the sound should have felt a little bit more robust than I don't think it was. It felt a little more tinny and kind of hollow, which was a little disappointing. But having said that, they really did nail that like very iconic ting sound when the clip gets ejected from the M1.
I feel like that's so iconic in all games. It just sticks out so well.
Yes, absolutely. And they did a great job with that here as well. And as far as the voice acting, because we do like to kind of touch on that in this section as well, I will just say as a general blanket statement, I thought it was pretty good. And I thought it was a nice touch. And I think part of this is because of Spielberg's involvement, especially coming hot off the heels of Band of Brothers, that there were several occasions where when you'd have NPCs sort of interacting with each other or with you, they had different regional American accents, which was like a very specific thing that I thought was a nice touch, because, these guys that were deployed did come from all over the country. And so you had dudes with New York accents and guys with Southern drawls, and you had that here as well, which I thought was a really nice touch.
Yeah, I didn't really notice it.
I didn't either.
It's good that you did.
I mean, the fact that you did just means props to the devs, because I didn't notice it. But I took game design in college. That's what I have an associate's in. Not using any of it, but I took it. If you're doing sound design well, then no one's going to notice it. Mm-hmm. So there's certain things where it's like, since we didn't notice that, I mean, we noticed other aspects, obviously, especially due to the age. And I was wondering, Chris, maybe since Shane mentioned the weapons sound a bit tinny, I wonder if just the digital version, everything's compressed for some reason, which wouldn't make sense, because I feel like computers are so advanced that you don't need to compress those files, but maybe I have no idea.
It might be the case. I think just to save space, maybe.
I
don't know how many discs the physical release was, or if it came out on a DVD-ROM or whatever the case might be. If it streamed a lot of their sound directly from the CD or DVD, that could be another thing that could affect how the sound comes out. I'm not a sound engineer. I'm not a game developer, so I can't tell you what the case might be there. But you'd think that they'd be able to upload all of that and to have the sound be clear nowadays, unless they were using Red Book Audio, which very few games were at that point. So I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, it's possible, because Red Book Audio would have been possible with the advent of the CD-ROM, which at this point had PS1 was out in 94, 95. So it would have been 7 years into having disc-based capabilities readily, both in console and obviously earlier for computer. So
right.
I would be surprised that they weren't using Red Book Audio.
But Red Book Audio had mostly been passed over by 2002, because if you look at early PlayStation 1, I know we're kind of going on a tangent here and diverting from the main thing here, but we are talking about audio. Red Book Audio was something you would see in early PS1 releases. It was something you would probably see in Sega CD or Turbo CD releases as well, because the game file itself wasn't going to fill up the entirety of the 650 to 700 megabyte space on the CD. So you could put full Red Book Audio tracks.
I get what you're saying.
Exactly. So they were uncompressed audio track. Good example that would be more of a mainstream title, be it, I guess, Battle Arena Toshinden or Street Fighter Alpha, the first one. You could put those games in a CD player and skip to track, it's either 2 or 3, and you'd be able to listen to the tracks of those games. And the games would queue up those tracks when they were ready to play when they were playing. And that's Red Book Audio. If you can't do that on your CD, if you can't individually play the tracks off your CD like that, somehow it's compressed somewhere within the game file itself. That's not Red Book Audio. That's the key difference.
I gotcha.
So if it was originally Red Book Audio, that you would have to have a disc in to play it. And again, I'm pretty much talking out of my ass here, everybody. So if I'm way off base, I'm fine.
It sounds really convincing, though.
It does.
You did need the disc in to play it, but I don't know if that still doesn't mean they had Redbook audio, you know, like it's just one of those things like you just put the disc in. Like I actually have the physical disc like in front of me. Well, I was messaging you off mic because I couldn't get my old disc to work on my new computer. I was hoping I could because, you know, running compatibility mode or whatever. I'm actually, you might hear some of it on the mic. I'm sifting through my desk now just to see if I can find it. It was, I mean, it's possible. It was a 2-disc set to install the game initially.
Yeah. Yeah. It was on CD-ROM.
Yeah.
I think I actually have my physical copy around here somewhere too, now that I think about it.
So about a maximum of 1.3, 1.4 gigabytes.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with a full orchestra, or even if not, it's just a recording, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not Redbook audio, even in the original.
Yeah, that would be a curious thing to look up because, yeah, definitely the copy I played, the digital copy, the music is extremely compressed. It sounds like it came right out. You could swap this out with an N64 game with the same composition, and they sound the same, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
All right, I think we are getting to that point, or not I know we're at that point. We're about to wrap this up, and that's where we are going to give our verdict on whether or not this game holds up today. Josh, you are our guest. You will have the final say today on your opinion whether or not this game has held up.
Oh, well, thank you.
You are welcome. You have the last word. And because of that, Shane, how about you kick this one off? Has this game held up?
Ugh. Okay. That's a tough one, actually. So on one hand, I feel like it is a fairly solid World War II shooter experience. All told, is really only going to cost you about 6 to 8 hours of your life, which is not a big ask, really. On the other, I do think that most gamers today will tend to expect more from their games, as we mentioned earlier, than what I think Medal of Honor Allied Assault ultimately delivers. It's extremely light on story, so it can't necessarily lean on that as a selling point, and the actual mechanics of the game are serviceable but can often be pretty irritating. So you can't say that the gameplay makes up for the lack of plot. So I don't know. Like, you could do worse than this for sure, which is not like a glowing review, but I just don't think the overall package of this game has aged particularly gracefully. And it's interesting because, I mean, having been there when this game was released, I mean, this game got universal praise. Like I said, some places calling it the next great FPS after Half-Life. It won numerous Game of the Year awards, accolades for the sound design and all of this stuff. And those are all totally valid in that particular time period. But now it's a much harder sell, I think. So I think if you're like an FPS and or World War II buff or some mix of both, because I'm sure that Venn diagram is almost a circle in a lot of cases, I think it's worth the time investment, especially because it's relatively short. But I do think that the story of the Allies' involvement in this particular conflict has been told by later titles in what I would say would be a much more engaging and overall more satisfying fashion.
I think that's fair. I'm much in the same position you are. I don't know. I have no idea if this game necessarily holds up in terms of whether or not people should play it today. And the major reason behind that is because I don't like first person shooters as a general rule. I can't give advice on most first person shooters, so I can only say whether or not I found the game fun today. And I'll say this: the first 3 or 4 levels have some of the most fun I've had with a first person shooter in a long time. I can recognize that Halo is a better game, but I think I had more fun with this game than I did with Halo, if you understand what I'm saying. This game's stuck in a weird place, I think, in history, because this game did come out right after Halo, right after you had that regenerating health mechanic that was in the shields of Halo, and the health didn't regenerate, but your shield did. So it has a lot of the mechanics that were very prevalent in early first-person shooters, but don't align with late first-person shooters that you'll see. And like Call of Duty, where if you get hit, you hide and you recover all your health and you can go out and you can do your thing. So if you like older first-person shooters, you're going to have a lot to love here, but you do have to realize it's cheap, like a lot of old first-person shooters. It's arcadey to a point. It's frantic to a point, and it's more of a shooting gallery game than a real World War II simulator. I'm going to have to give this a very light no, that it does not hold up today, just because you do have so many other options when it comes to World War II. And gunplay has gotten a lot better in games that do represent that time period in your first-person shooter games. But it's still a game, if you like the early first-person shooters, if that's your thing, yes. But as a general standpoint for everybody, if I'm talking about everybody, it is a light no, a very light no, because I still had fun with it, even if later levels just completely pissed me off and turned me off from it. There is still plenty of fun to have here. So light no. What about you, Josh?
So I will say that I really enjoyed this game. I love the Medal of Honor series. I love old FPS design, specifically this type where after you kill all the enemies, none of them respawn and you walk back through empty hallways that are just eerie as hell because there is just a ghost town. There's no civilians there. It's just an empty hall of just death that you left behind. And I find that bizarrely satisfying. Not the death part, but just like it's almost like a cathartic thing. Not cathartic. It's just zen kind of. It's just very eerie and unsettling at other times, but it's calming at others. This hallway that you once were in. I love the music. I like the variety of guns you get to choose from. But with all that said, I put this as a no because
wow. Okay.
This game, I think on a technical level, you could say yes, because all of us had fun with this. And especially you, Chris, you don't like FPSs. Mm-hmm. You've never played a Medal of Honor game. So you went into this with literally no emotional attachment that I did, and none that Shane did either, because Shane played this game too. Mm-hmm. But you still found enjoyment out of it.
Yes.
So on a technical level, it's worth going back to, but does it really hold up? No, because there are other World War II first-person shooters that have done this and better. I mean, hell, even if you look at Call of Duty did better than this. Like, and I love the original Call of Duty games because the set pieces were amazing and the level design it felt so chaotic and it felt a lot more like World War II than this did. This feels like a first-person shooter. This feels like a hallway first-person shooter with a World War II skin. And as much as I love that, it is just that. And so I think people will have better experiences with more modern World War II. I mean, Call of Duty just went back to World War II again, and you're going to find better, more modern experiences that are World War II FPSs than this game. That being said, it's worth giving it a shot because it is fun, but it does not hold up, I don't think.
All right.
I think so. We're all kind of in agreement on this one. Good stuff.
I am surprised. I did not think we were going to be unanimous in that, honestly. But but there you go.
I didn't want to give my rating.
I think I'm actually the most favorable out of you two.
I didn't want it. I when we were writing down the notes and it's like, does it hold up today? I'm like, in my heart says yes, but my mind says no. So I went with my mind.
I was so leaning into yes, and I think I still gave it the most favorable hold up out of you two, but I was so leaning into yes because I did have fun with it. But it's like, would I rather play this or recommend this to anybody over Call of Duty 2 or Call of Duty 3? And no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not before you get into Call of Duty World at War. So I mean, no, it's really hard because it is a game you have fun with, but
it's a game that you look at for historical context of video game history as well as World War II history to an extent. But in terms of video game history, it's a super important game because it brought a popular console genre to the PC. It was where the Infinity Ward guys got their start. And love or hate Call of Duty, it is a juggernaut of the industry and has been. Even now with games like Fortnite, they're still making money off of the Call of Duty brand. This game set up arguably the most influential brand of the late 2000s and early 2010s.
No.
this game set that all up. And then if you go back even further, you have the original Medal of Honor. Obviously, FPSs all feed into one another in terms of influence, but it's very seldom that you can draw a direct straight line in video game history, because games, iterate off each other and take inspiration from each other. But you can literally draw a direct inspiration from, you can draw a direct inspiration from Saving Private Ryan to Call of Duty. And that's just how it happened.
That's true. Yeah,
absolutely.
When you look at this game is better in terms of looking at a historical, like in terms of video game history, where does it fall in line? What did it do new? And it did a lot of things new for the time. But if you're comparing it to modern games and modern standards, it's kind of like one of those ones where it's like, oh, this is a fun. It's one of those games you play for 10 minutes. Be like, oh, this is really fun. This is a fun idea. I'm not going to come back to this, but I really enjoyed what I did here. It's that kind of experience now to new players, unless you really like this kind of experience. But by and large, I would say for the general public, this would be a game that unless you're into video game history or you like this type of experience, it's not really going to be your cup of tea.
Yeah, it would have easily been a yes for me if it wasn't for the last two levels and the Nazi anti-stormtrooper aiming convention. Like, they obviously went to different gun schools other than their direct allegorical counterparts, which is unfortunate, because if their aim was a little bit more off, I think it would have had a little bit better of a time overall, especially in the last levels.
Mm-hmm.
So, Shane, we're not going to drag this out any longer. You're probably like, please shut up. So would you please wrap this up for our poor audience?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think if it were up to our audience, they'd want all of our episodes to just be like 4 hours long. They can't get enough.
I like long episodes personally when I listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Sometimes no, but most times, yeah.
See, there you go. But I suppose we are at that time. So before we get into our little spiel, we always want to make sure that we leave ample time for our most esteemed guests to talk a bit about where the fine listeners at home can find them. So, Josh, would you like to plug the stuff that you do and where they can find it?
Sure. And I'll do my best to keep it concise, because as your listeners can tell, I tend to ramble.
Oh, go for it, dude. Just let it loose.
My name is Josh Covel. I am the host of the Still Loading podcast. You can find it where all good podcasts are given out for free. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all that jazz. I do retro and modern video games. At the time of recording, my newest episode was a Captain N rewatch. For those who remember the Captain N cartoon, a friend of mine a friend of mine and I have been going through episode by episode once a month. We do one episode of the podcast for one episode of the show, and we torture ourselves by watching this amazingly bad cartoon. But I do stuff that, I do game retrospectives. I have interviews with people in the industry. I think an interview that'd be of interest to your listeners back in December, so it's not that old. I did an interview with Jeremy Blaustein, who famously is the translator and localizer for the original Metal Gear Solid, for Symphony of the Night. He also did Silent Hill 2, 3, and I think 4, maybe at least 2 and 3. And he also worked on the Pokemon cartoon for a little bit too, where his sister, Maddie Blaustein, was the voice of Meowth.
Oh, nice.
Unfortunately, she did pass away. I know that's a bit of a downer, so we're going to get off that, but she was the voice of Meowth, and he worked as a translator / localizer. Actually, real quick funny story. When we're talking about it, he talks about how difficult it is to, localization is so difficult depending on what it is. And there's a character in Pokemon, it's Professor Oak's brother, who speaks specifically in puns, and trying to translate Japanese word puns into English word puns does not work on a 1-to-1 scale. So so for example, if instead of saying Pikachu, he would say like Pichumon, and like maybe Pichu meant like steak or something like that, right? Maybe like PI. I that's not an actual translation. I don't know what Pimon would mean, but like instead of saying Pikachu, he would say like Pimonchu or something like that. And instead of meaning Pikachu, it means like steak chew or something like that. But obviously you can't, if you translate that directly in English, steak chew isn't a pun. It means nothing. But in Japanese, Pimonchu would actually make sense, because Pikachu, Pimonchu, it kind of works. So he tells a story about how he got fired from Pokemon because when he raised that issue, he's like, what do you want me to do here? Because I can't translate this literally. It's not a joke. And they just told him basically to shut up and translate. And that did not sit well with him.
We could have had steak chew.
Steak chew, right?
Oh, well.
So it's shit like that where it was a really fun interview. So yeah, I do stuff like that. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you. And as far as we're concerned, if you are listening to this, then that means you've found us. So hi, hello, welcome. We're glad that you're here. And if you'd like to engage with the show in a couple of different ways, we make that available to you. And not only that, but we make it easy. We've got this fantastic thing that all the cool kids are doing, which is called a link tree. And all you need to do is head over to linktree/retro hangover. That's linktr.ee/retro hangover. And you will be presented with a handy dandy menu of buttons that will direct you to anywhere that you want to go, whether it's our socials or our Twitch streams or the YouTube channel, or if you'd like to support the show in a more concrete sort of fashion, we do have the Patreon as well as the merch store. So please feel free to check those out as well if you are so inclined. And Chris, would you like to tell the fine people a little bit about what we do on Sunday nights at 9 p.m.?
So, it's called a stream and it's on Twitch. And you can find us there at twitch.tv/retro hangover at 9 p.m. Eastern time. That's US Eastern time. And we play games at that time for about 2 hours from 9 to 11. And look, our community has been showing up on these streams. They've been doing a fantastic job. They're great entertainment. And you should partake in that. And because I think you'll have a good time. So show up there at our Twitch streams on Sunday night, twitch.tv/retro hangover. And it will be okay.
It'll be just okay.
There you go.
It'll be all right.
Better than bad.
It's not bad.
All right. Well, and so thank you, Josh, again for joining us on the show. This was a pleasure, and we were very happy to have you here to discuss Medal of Honor.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
No.
I did that much better.
Yeah. Chris is the king of that, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But with all of that being said, until next time.
Play with your Nazi toilet jumping out of joysticks.
Shane here with a quick message. You know, the one rule Chris and I have always gone by regarding advertisements is this. It has to be something we use and can personally vouch for. If you know me, you know I love coffee. And Bones Coffee Company has been my go-to for home brewing for quite some time now. Their small batch beans come in an impressive variety of flavors like Mint Invaders from Chocolate Space, or Electric Unicorn, which I swear tastes exactly like Fruity Pebbles. And the best part? No added sugar or calories involved, just natural flavors infused right into the beans themselves. Build your own sample pack of 5 4-ounce bags to find out which flavors speak to you, or jump in head first with full 12-ounce bags. They've even got K-Cups. Step up your homebrew game with Bones Coffee by visiting bit.ly/RHPBones. That's bit.ly/RHPBONES.